Welcome everyone to another episode of Bubbles and Beyond, the podcast where we explore all things scuba diving and the incredible stories and experiences of individuals who embrace the underwater world. I'm your host Craig Perkins, and today we have a special guest who's explored the depths, a passionate scuba diver, Mo Drennan. Mo, welcome to the show.
Hi Craig, welcome back and thanks very much for inviting me.
Mo, we're excited to have you today. Let's start from the beginning. How did you first get involved into scuba diving and what drew you to this underwater adventure?
I grew up with a fascination for the sea. We had a caravan down in Maidens and I did a lot of sea activities, canoeing and such like there. And then one day I saw an advert in my local paper advertising tri dives. However, I couldn't attend the training, just the time wasn't right. So many years later, actually when I hit 50, I saw it advertised again and I thought, now's the time, I can do this, and I went along for a tri dive.
So you took a dry dive. What's involved in a tri dive?
Well, what happened was when I got there, I was allocated an instructor, my own personal instructor. I was kitted out with everything that I needed for the tri dive, which was the regulators, the jacket, the weights and the fins, and I was given some simple instructions which can be used underwater, and we went into the pool and basically I was shown how to use my regulators to breathe underwater, to float myself up and down, and we went for a swim for a few lengths and just got used to kind of like being able to breathe underwater.
Wow, what was that like for the first time?
It was absolutely incredible. I've never experienced anything like it. It's so different from being in water and holding your breath. To think that you can breathe like a fish, it's an incredible experience. And
so what happened next, Mo?
well, I decided that this was a sport for me. I might be in my middling years, however, you need to give everything a bash. So I asked what the next steps was. I was told about the training that would be involved, which included all your essential experience that you need to be able to clean your mask, to take your mask off, how to use your regulators, and that was done over several weeks in the pool. But then there was also lectures, and that was just as fascinating because then you learned about how your lungs worked, how your body copes at depth, and it gives you a sense of belief that you can look after yourself underwater should anything go wrong.
That sounds amazing. So I've done my training, Mo, that's me qualified, I'm off into the sea. What happens next?
Well, that's pretty much it. Yeah, then what you have to do is you also have sea training. But before that, you're given a wee bit of time to get used to the idea. So what happened to me was that I had got a brand new suit and we set off in the boat to go for a small dive. We only went to a depth of 3 metres and it was quite daunting to throw yourself backwards off a boat into the sea. It looked cold, it looked dark, and it was scary. However, after a gentle nudge off the boat, I was in the water. And the first time I looked under the water and could breathe, it was incredible. I could actually see things. I could see starfish, I could see crabs. And then I thought, this is for me. So my instructor, we sat at the bottom and we got comfortable breathing. We made sure all my equipment was on correctly, everything was working fine, and then we went for a swim. It was just, along the rock face up the bottom, gradually moving a wee bit deeper, and the things that I saw, it's so different from on TV. It was incredible. And a lot of it at the time was, crabs, but the colours of the creatures were absolutely fascinating. It was amazing. I didn't honestly think they had such a thing in our waters.
Wow. And that was your first dive? Went without incident?
No, not quite. I, as I say, had bought myself a new dry suit and turned up on the day, got kitted into it and zipped it up. But what my instructor didn't know was that I had 2 zips, and of course my inner zip wasn't closed. So after about 15-20 minutes I thought, I'm getting a wee bit cold here. I kind of feel a wee bit damp, but then I was probably just imagining it, not knowing what it was supposed to feel like. So after about half an hour I was getting really cold and I thought, right, okay, this is so we duly came up and it was only then that we discovered that my zip had not been closed properly. All the water had come in, I was soaking wet, and so by the time they managed to haul me back onto the boat with all this water in my suit, I had to be hung up by my legs to empty it all out. So it was certainly different, but I still loved it, and I still couldn't wait to go back in the next time.
That's amazing. I mean, your equipment's obviously very important. Is the equipment very expensive, Mo?
Yes and no. Now, some barks can be. It depends whether you want to buy new, whether you want to buy second hand. There's a lot of second hand stuff out there being sold by reputable people. However, what I would say is always be guided by people. If you're in a club, by them, and you'll tend to find that the club will have an awful lot of things that they can possibly help to sell as well. The main expensive things are your suit and your regulators, which is what help you breathe. And quite frankly, I had to buy mine new, solely because it's what keeps you alive, and I had to make sure that they were in top condition. So once you've got all your kit, it can be a wee bit expensive getting it together, but once you've got it, it's not expensive to dive at all. In the club that I'm in, we have our own boat. We chip in for fuel after a dive, and it's usually only a few pounds per dive.
So we've got all our kit, we're in the water, we're enjoying diving. What about marine life? You've touched on it already, some of the starfishes and the crabs and stuff that you've seen. What really stands out in all your dives?
The most fascinating creature that I have ever seen in any of my dives is called a nudibranch. Now, they're tiny creatures, but they are an incredible array of colours. You know, and another dive is the seals. They'll come up and play with you while you're in the water. They'll follow you about, and it's other than the scallop. I mean, it's something that you could never ever think would happen to you. It's amazing.
You touched on scallop there. Now, you and I had a dive, I remember it very, very vividly. Tell us about the scallops.
The scallops, you know, I've only ever seen a scallop basically a shell lying on a beach. I've never seen a creature, you know, in real life. And you pointed out to me this strange thing that was swimming along on its side with the water pulsing out it, and it's, you know, like wiggling its way across through the sea. And it was hilarious. It was really, really hilarious. But again, something that you would never ever see on TV, and you were inches away from it.
It's quite incredible.
It was brilliant. So
I presume there's a lot of planning goes into diving, a lot of organisation.
There is, yes. The way our club works is that one person will decide who fancies going diving. So then a plan is put in place where you're going diving, how you're getting to that dive, what the weather's like, you know, what any safety features are to get into that particular water. We do a lot of our boat dives, and we have trained, experienced divers who are also boat drivers. We do a lot of the sites that we like, which we know, but there's always a dive plan. There's always a time logged for being in the water, for coming out the water. We always check our ear, and we also have what's called a buddy. Now, a buddy is very, very important because you always dive with a buddy. You have to have someone else with you, and that buddy, as well as kind of like being there to help you if things go wrong, will check all your equipment before you actually go in the water. So there is a little saying with was it burgers with relish and fries, and basically they make up, you know, how to check your buckles, your air, your equipment, your regulators, and the final check, which is just make sure everything's fine. So you do that, and you show where all your equipment is, how to unloosen it should you have to remove anything, and then, you know, that's you log your times, and away you go.
Would you say that diving is like a bit of a community? Do they all kind of help each other out?
Absolutely. I have never known any kind of diving experiences where people wouldn't help each other if they were stuck. It's a fundamental part of diving. It is an extreme sport. The people who dive commit to not only looking after the marine life, but they commit to helping each other. They will, help with equipment, they'll help with their experience, they'll help, just overall.
Tell me, what's your favourite dive site, Mo?
Probably my most favourite dive site is just off of Little Cumbria, towards the end of the island, and it's a ledge, and the ledge is full of marine life. The variety of sea creatures never fails to impress. It changes every dive that you're down there, and it's quite easy to get to. There is the rock face. I'd say there's lots of little things that hide in it. You can poke your torch in, and again, it's a calm area, so there isn't really an awful lot of tidal interference. That to me would be my favourite dive site. However, my best wreck dive, of which I've only done a few, is just off of Troon, and it's called the SS Adik. Now, I haven't done an awful lot of wrecks, but this has to be my favourite, solely because the way it's a cargo steamer that's down there, and the way that she lies on the seabed, you can see the full wooden structure of her. You can actually swim up it, and it's incredible to think that this thing carried equipment, carried people, carried supplies, and it's now there on the bottom of the sea.
And is it still fairly intact?
It's not too bad. I mean, I believe it's something along the lines of it's been down for about 142 years, so it is slowly eroding, but yeah, you can still see so much of the outline of it. It's definitely worth a visit.
Amazing. So that's your best dive sites.
Yep.
Tell us about your best dive.
Now that has to be my hen dive.
Sorry?
My hen dive, yes. I was getting married, and
to the fine Eddie who's in the studio as we speak.
And the question was, what are you doing for your hen night, Mo? I'm not a party person, as you know, and so it was fielding, going to all the pubs, all the clubs, and then someone came up with the idea of, why don't you have a hen dive? And I thought that was a great idea. So myself, my elder sister Lynn, who was in the club at the time, and a girl who was in the club, we had a hen dive, and you drove the boat for us.
I did indeed.
And of course, when I turned up with all my kit to get ready to dive, I was then bedecked with veils and rosettes and such like, just to advertise to all the fish that this was a hen dive. But it was a really good dive. It was a really good night. And then afterwards we went to the pub just to throw out a wee bit, a couple of wines, went down a treat.
So Mo, we can tell from the conversation how much you enjoy diving. Tell me about the environmental aspect of diving, though.
Well, although we're divers, we like to make sure that if we see anything lying about, we'll pick it up. So far we've brought up all sorts of old nets and bottles, which we bring to shore, dispose of. However, it is really, really sad to see how much rubbish is thrown into the sea. In any given dive, you can have a full grab bag full of rubbish, and it's people have to take responsibility for what they throw away.
And I wonder if more people saw what you saw under the water, if they'd have a bit more respect for it.
I imagine that they would, because it's not something that you'll ever forget. There is a whole way of life down there, a whole ecosystem that just begs to be seen in person, and I would urge anybody to take the plunge and go for a try dive.
So somebody comes up to you in the street and says, Mo, why should I start diving?
Somebody asked me that question not so long ago, and my response was, why wouldn't you start diving?
Excellent answer. Mo, listen, thank you for coming along today. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks very much, Craig.